We are record. All right, so we are ready for part two of why you should vote no on all four for the March 29th election. Hey, Sister Frida.
So
And
Dawn, we just go ahead, Storm.
before you go into how they are, um, how they are similar, I just wanted to point out you were saying why this election is so very important. This is one we should not set out on. You know, a lot of people want to talk about us having a democracy. We do not have a democracy. We live in a democratic republic, which is one of the safeguards that we actually have that some other democracies did not have, that actually fell to the common propaganda that we are seeing currently. So, um, and some of the things that we are seeing are similar to what went up against them on trying to replace the judges, trying to replace the different things that they had in place at that time. So you are 100% right that if we don't stand up, if we do not participate in the fact that we do have some safeguards in place in America, and if we don't stand up and fight for those safeguards that we do have here, we may very well actually lose them. So you are 100% correct in that.
Thank you so much, Storm. As we talked about Amendment One and the election of judges and specialty courts, because that's what it's all about. The issue of attorneys being out of state, that's just a red herring, y'all. And
Mhm.
understand what I mean when we say a red herring. That's just something to dangle out there for you to take your eyes off of what the actual intent is. So let me read to you Amendment 4, which is a companion to Amendment 1. Do
Okay.
you support an amendment to provide for the use of the earliest election day to fill judicial vacancies? So if you let me just give you a little bit of context here. We just had an election in February, second weekend in February.
Mhm.
These amendments were passed, as Jan said, through the legislature during a special session last summer. They were primed and ready to go.
Mhm.
Why didn't we put them on? I know it wasn't a statewide election, but that election could have been a part of this one, but they were afraid that we would have a larger turnout.
Mhm.
They wouldn't have gotten the result they wanted, Alfredo.
This is March 29th. But here's the thing I want people to remember.
Mhm.
March 29th is the election day, but we have 7 days between March 15th and March 22nd where people can vote early. In
Yes.
addition, we have what they have tried to destroy as absentee voting that makes it more difficult for people to vote absentee, but we have people who can vote absentee. And we encourage people who are eligible to vote absentee to actually do it and do it in a timely manner. Today, as we speak, is the last day to register to vote online. If you have not yet registered to vote, I encourage you to do it like this minute
And
after we get off the air.
Alfreda, if I might interject, don't assume that you are registered. In fact, I have a homegirl who votes regularly, and she said in the last election, she good thing she checked because she was not on the rolls and she had to register. So go online to go vote. Make sure that your registration is active, and if it's not active, go ahead and click through so you can get your registration in before midnight tonight. So
So,
don't
so,
think
and
it's
I want to just say, I see you, Storm. I want to just say that the earliest opportunity is not always the best opportunity, because if we say the earliest opportunity and there's any discretion there, if it is a low voter turnout election, that's when they're, but it allows them up to 12 months. It allows them up to 12 months to call the election. So just be mindful that there's no necessity for this amendment 4, and there's no necessity for amendment 1, but they do go hand in hand. So just as Dawn was saying earlier, no on all 4, because they're all 4 awful, and they will not serve to uplift our community. Here's the challenge that and I'm going to use my Sunday school because y'all know that's who I am. A house divided against itself cannot stand.
Yes.
And if you keep picking us off, and we allow these people to keep picking us off and pitting us against each other,
Yes.
we're going to destroy our democratic republic, as Storm just called it. We're going to destroy it because we call ourselves the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
And we are not united. We want to marginalize certain communities so that certain other communities are empowered, and it never turns out well.
For the marginalized, or the ones that thought they were going to be left out of the trauma and the confusion and the consequences of what they're doing.
I see a little person, Dawn. This is real life.
Stephon Collins. Go ahead on and speak to the people.
Hi there.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted people to recognize, that Amendment 1 and Amendment 2 really are two sides of the same coin. They
1 and 4
each other. 1 and 4 are companions. They're companion bills.
Okay.
So no on 1 is a no on 4.
All right, perfect. Okay, so then that leaves us with just one more amendment, correct?
Right, Amendment 3. And let me just read that one real quick, because I want you guys to understand, to know when you go into the polls, this is the language that's going to be on the ballot, but it does not represent what they're actually trying to do. So here's Amendment 3. And notice how short it is, because y'all help me talk about it, because what they're doing is trying to, you understand that we have an aging population in state custody, and those people are ill. They've been in jail forever, and they can't do all of the manual labor that allows them to make the exception to the 13th Amendment that enslaves people.
And for clarity, Mr. Alfreda, when we say manual labor, are we just talking about litter on the side of the road? Or are we talking about full-blown inmate?
I'm talking about people standing over human beings with guns, forcing them to do labor and enslaving them, because the 13th Amendment, the only exception to not being able to enslave people in this country is to sentence them to a felony and hard labor.
Okay.
And so when you are,
so how do we replace all of our slaves then, Alfreda?
I'm sorry, say it again, Storm.
So then how did we replace all of our slaves?
Well, with the 13th Amendment, correct? With that little clause.
The 13th Amendment has a clause in it that makes an exception for felonies and sentencing those persons to hard labor. So the thing about this amendment, and let me read it so that you guys understand what it says. Do you support an amendment to provide the legislature the authority to determine felony crimes when committed by a person under the age of 17, when it may be transferred for criminal prosecution as an adult? Here's the problem. Well, here's one of the multiplicity of problems. There's no bottom. There's no minimum age.
My 8-year-old.
Your 8-year-old could be charged as an adult based on undefined crimes, because the crimes are not listed in the Constitution right now. We have an exception that allows people to be charged as adults. The crimes are people who are under the age of 17 who may be charged as adults, but the crimes are defined. They are mostly violent crimes like rape, murder, those kinds of armed robbery, those kinds of things. They're listed in the Constitution.
Additionally, isn't there procedurally a provision in place that it's not just automatic either?
No, it's not automatic.
Okay.
It's not, the procedure itself, I don't believe is in the Constitution, but it's in statute. But you do have to evaluate on a case by case basis when a child can be moved and to the adult courts. But here's another challenge with that. Please understand that if we charge children as adults and they are sentenced to for a felony and at hard labor, that means that those children can also be incarcerated in adult prisons.
So my 8-year-old, I want to believe people wouldn't be this cruel, but
they are.
My 8-year-old could be housed in Angola, technically.
Yep.
Well,
yes,
now
ma'am.
The law says that, and this is not state law, but this is Supreme Court precedent, that children who are held in adult jail have to be segregated from adult inmates. So not only is it just cruel and inhumane policy to treat children as adults in the criminal justice system. And my understanding from the testimony is we're talking about 14, 15, and 16-year-olds.
But when you put no bottom in the language, then what are we doing?
State law, I think, is 13 and below. You cannot go into the adult system. Okay. So we're talking about 14, 15, and 16-year-olds in state law. But
so
yeah,
you and I, so it's in state law, but they are saying that we are going to put in the Constitution an opportunity for us to redefine all of that. So if they do redefine it, it's going to allow unless that language in the Constitution says that it is 14, 15, 16-year-olds, that allows them, and they will take it. They will take every opportunity, because we've seen it. They will take the opportunity to put these children. We had one legislator doing the debate say that there was 3-year-olds who were irredeemable. He literally said that.
It's grotesque. And again, during the debate, they were asked repeatedly, what crimes are there that children cannot, that you want to be able to send children into the adult system. And remember, the first thing they did last year was they repealed the raise the age law. So 17-year-olds, until Jeff Landry became governor, were still treated as children. And
that's right.
So now they repealed that. So 17-year-olds who commit felony crimes or accused of felony crimes are automatically transferred to the adult system. This is about creating new crimes or new definitions of crimes, felonies, luckily not misdemeanors. So we're not, but felonies by 14, 15, and 16-year-olds, possibly younger. But we're talking about people who we have a separate jurisprudence system for young people because their brains are not developed.
That's right.
We don't let them, in many cases, you're not old enough to drive a car. You're definitely not old enough to vote. You're not old enough to serve in the military, and you're not old enough to drink a beer. Mm-hmm. And you are not even old enough to go to an R-rated movie. You can't watch The Godfather.
Yeah.
Because you're considered too immature to be able to handle the content of an R-rated movie. Mm-hmm. But this is saying that the criminal legal system in Louisiana can treat you as an adult if you make a big mistake. The other reason we have a juvenile justice system is because young people are much more capable of being rehabilitated.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so we have a
Yeah.
system. Yeah. So that's why we have a juvenile justice system, because people do make mistakes. Kids do dumb things. Anybody who's had a child knows that.
Especially
But
the teenage years. Help
Young
us.
and dumb is a
I'm
saying for a reason.
absolutely.
And we need to be
you grow out of
mindful
it.
also. We need to be mindful also that there's a reason that we don't call them felonies when they're committed by children. They're juvenile crimes, right? And if we are looking at that rehabilitation piece. And so when we talk about juvenile life, we're talking about a child who may come into the prison system that is not rehabilitated. And 3 years in, they may be 14 years old, and 3 years in, they're not rehabilitated. But during that juvenile life, we are evaluating them for an opportunity to release them back into society after they have been rehabilitated. That's what it's all about. And it's also about those children being able to have a future. That's what sealing their records was about. Now, let me be very clear. I am not one of those very liberal people, and I am a very progressive person. And but I am not one of those people who believes that children need to have a pass when they've murdered somebody. I am not one of those people who believe that they should have a pass when they've raped someone or when they have carjacked someone and drugged somebody down the street. That ain't me. As my law school professor, Professor Tidwell, I think I'm not sure if you got to meet Professor Tidwell, Dawn, but Professor Tidwell was my criminal law professor. And Professor Tidwell said something that stuck in my head, and it's still there. Some of them little cherubs need to be in the pen. And so I'm not one of those, but I do believe that children must be segregated. I do believe that children must be given an opportunity for rehabilitation. And the other thing is, we already know the root cause of crime, not just for juveniles, but also for adults. It's poverty.
Yes.
And if we didn't exclude people from having opportunity because they have made mistakes,
Yes,
then we would have fewer people who recidivate and go back into the prison system. We know how to address this without putting more and more people in prison. And I'm gonna stop talking now.
and Jan is letting us know in the chat that he's got to roll out.
Thank you, Jan, so much. I'll see you on Monday.
Thank you all. This was a pleasure, and I hope everybody goes to the polls on or before March 29th. Thank you, Dawn, for everything you do, and Ms. Alfred, I'll see you in a couple of days.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
So it was a question that I had too, and it slipped as it relates to the Amendment 3 with the juveniles. Jeez.
While you're thinking of that, one of the things that bothers me the most about it is where it's inserting and discussing again the mandatory minimums. The biggest problem we have had with mandatory minimums, especially in our community, is the crack versus cocaine issue. And that has been huge in my personal family. And especially when you look at the difference in the two drugs, which one is more dangerous? Like in reality, when we look at it at the long end, but yet it is the crack that you get more time for.
It's who is using the drug, right? Who overwhelmingly uses the drug. We know that everybody, every socioeconomic, whether they are wealthy or poor or middle class, but overwhelmingly, because crack is less expensive.
It's the poor drug and coke is the rich drug.
That's right.
But because coke is so pure, It's more dangerous, but they're not going
Yeah.
to go after the rich people.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, with the minimum things, I know in Texas, not every state is the same. In Texas, they also have like the 3 strike law. So I had a brother doing 25 to life for weed.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
when you start doing these minimum,
Yes.
Yeah.
you get into
And putting it in statute that is a minimum. And that reminds me, if you don't mind, my question about the Amendment 3 is the language they putting down going to be in effect just like mandatory minimums, where the judge that's elected does not have the power to make determinations based on the facts of the case when it comes to the age situation?
I haven't read it that way, Dawn.
Okay.
I have not, but I will check it again, and by Monday I'll know when it's time. But I haven't read it that way. This was given the legislature the authority to say what crimes could be
Good.
used.
Okay.
That's how I read it.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I
Okay.
will read the entire context again. But I
No,
don't
okay.
see it that way.
Okay, good.
It's the legislature being able to define the crimes and also leaving open the
The
age.
floor.
And I'm telling you, there was literally debate where a legislator said that there were 3-year-olds who were irredeemable. Now, if that's the mindset that they're going into this piece of legislation, this proposed constitutional amendment,
But
if they're
yeah,
going into it with that mindset,
yeah,
our
that's
children are in big
dangerous.
trouble.
They have not gone to law school. This is the same thing they did with women's health when they got into the doctor's business. Y'all don't know medical policy. You don't know legalese.
That's it.
Stop getting in other people's business because you don't know what you're doing and you're messing everything up. Stick to being a politician.
Well, what would be good, Storm, is if they went into the legislature to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of the people of this state, as opposed to
And then they call on
oppression.
experts such as attorneys and doctors to come in and speak on their respective field. No.
They had lawyers to come in and tell them to not do this.
Yeah,
But
they
they
just
had
not
other
listening.
people who had contributed to certain campaigns, and the sacrificial lamb was poor children and children of color. And we need to be mindful of that, because we don't, but the first thing was to take over the public defender's office, to
Yeah.
say that the governor was going to name the chair of the public defender board,
Mhm.
that person being beholden to him. And I foresee,
So the
it
state would
hasn't
be in
happened yet.
charge. So the state, for those who don't really understand what you just said, the state would then be in charge of prosecuting you and defending you. And what you think that's gonna look like?
It's an inherent
Yeah.
clear conflict of interest, because if the state, every time there's a prosecution, it is the state versus whoever.
Mhm.
If the state is a party and the state controls the amount of representation,
Mhm.
defense that person receives, it's an inherent conflict of interest. The person can never win. I foresee, and it hasn't happened yet, but I foresee, because I don't practice criminal law, but I foresee a whole lot of people filing motions
Uh-huh.
of ineffectual assistance of counsel.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If I am working for the people who are prosecuting you, I cannot. I have a
Your hands
conflict.
tied. Your hands tied. Period. Your check depends on your hands, keeping your hands behind your back.
And we have seen the level of retribution for people who disagree with the current governor of this state as well as the current president of the United States. Those people are targeted
Yes.
for retribution.
And I'll say this as we wrap up. And I thank you all for joining me today. I'll say this as it relates to whether or not it's some grand conspiracy theory that we throwing out, like aliens in metal tin can hats. No, this is not conspiracy theory type stuff. You know, there are literally, and there's financial incentive for government-run prisons. But to help you understand how much money and how people guarantee that they get money from building and running private prisons. You know, private prisons literally come to government and say, we will not build here. We will not invest here. Okay, remember, prisons are on the stock market. We will not invest here unless you can guarantee me a certain percentage of occupancy.
Yep. And then the state will be fined if we don't fill it.
Yes. So this is no conspiracy. This is profit motive and profit driven. And that mindset and that mentality is part of what we are seeing in these amendments. And so please vote no on all four. I hope we've answered all the questions that you have about all four amendments. If you have any questions, drop a comment in, and I will try my best to personally get back to you with some info if we didn't already cover it here. Again, Alfreda, let the people know when they can hear you on the radio and what station.
Please tune in to Perspective on WTQT 106.1 FM, or if you're outside of the Baton Rouge area, you can listen live at www.wtqt.org. Just click on Listen Live, and you can hear us from anywhere in the world. We air every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. and every Thursday morning at 8 a.m.
Beautiful. And Phoenix Rising will be back with our regular programming, and my regular co-host, King Cater, aka Chauncey Wesley Collins, my son, brother Caleb, and others. And so we look forward to bringing Phoenix Rising back to everyone on April 5th. That will be the first Saturday in April. And moving forward, we'll be once a month as we have been doing in the past. So thank you all. Again, drop any questions or comments in the chats, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much for having me, Dawn.
One quick thing was that William, my youngest, this is going to be his first time voting, and I have registered him to vote 3 times online. So when I went in and I checked, me and Michael, we're good. William is still not registered, so I am going to register him one more time. So if you have newly registered yourself, go in and check also, and I guess just register again if you're not showing up on the Go Vote.
And the other thing I want to tell you, Storm, is that if they do not confirm, you take him and let him vote provisionally. They have to allow him to vote provisionally, and then if you will be able to show the documentation that he actually registered, and do it during early voting, so there's an opportunity to correct it. Let him vote during early voting, but he should be able to vote provisionally because he has registered. Bring your paperwork, show them that he's registered, and yeah.
I mean, because he registered the first time when he was 17.
Yeah,
and he's 18.
And they should have already sent him something. Mm-hmm. All right, y'all have a great rest of your afternoon.